I grew up in difficult circumstances from the very beginning. My mother became pregnant at a very young age, and my biological father was never part of my life afterward. When the pregnancy became known, most of her family distanced themselves. Support disappeared quickly, and from that moment on, life became a matter of endurance rather than stability. We lived in a small place where nothing ever felt permanent. I learned early that security was not guaranteed and that plans could fall apart without warning. My childhood did not resemble what people usually imagine when they think about growing up. Education was inconsistent, and there was no structured guidance. Survival came first, and everything else was secondary. From a very young age, I was expected to manage responsibilities far beyond my years. I cleaned, organized, and took care of the space we lived in. I learned how to stay quiet, how to observe moods, and how to avoid conflict. I did not understand it back then, but those habits shaped how I interacted with the world later on. As time passed, the emotional atmosphere in our home grew heavier. There were long periods of tension and silence. Certain experiences left deep marks on me, even though I did not fully understand their impact at the time. I developed a constant sense of alertness, as if I always needed to be prepared for something to go wrong. What affected me the most was not the lack of money or comfort, but the feeling that my existence was a problem. Over time, that idea quietly settled into my mind. It slowly influenced how I saw myself and what I believed I deserved. Confidence became something distant, and trust felt unsafe. Because of that environment, social connections were difficult. I struggled to approach people and often kept my distance. Fear of rejection and misunderstanding became normal. It was easier to stay invisible than to risk being hurt or misunderstood again. Despite everything, curiosity never completely left me. Learning became a private activity rather than something guided or encouraged. Whenever I had access to a device, usually late at night, I watched online videos and tried to teach myself basic skills. Most of my written English came from those moments, learning quietly while everything else was still. There was no clear structure to this learning process. It was slow, fragmented, and often interrupted. Still, it gave me something important. It gave me a sense of control over my own progress. Even small improvements felt meaningful because they were earned entirely through my own effort. As I grew older, independence was no longer optional. By my early teenage years, it became clear that I would eventually need to rely on myself completely. I started working part-time jobs wherever I could. The work was exhausting and repetitive, but it provided one crucial thing: income one could manage myself. Saving money became a habit. Every small amount mattered. After a long period of careful saving, I bought my first phone. It may not have seemed like much to others, but to me it represented opportunity. That small device opened doors to information, work, and connection that I had never had before. After long shifts, I spent nights doing small online tasks. Freelance image-to-text work became one of the ways I earned extra income. It often meant sacrificing sleep and comfort. Many days blurred together, defined by work, effort, and fatigue. Still, I kept going because progress, even slow progress, felt better than standing still. During this time, my relationship with my mother faded even further. Eventually, she left to live with a new partner. I was still young, but by then, I had already learned how to survive on my own. Fortunately, I was not forced to leave our place immediately. The landlord was understanding, and that stability allowed me to continue working and planning. Living alone at that age was isolating. There were moments when I wished someone would check on me or ask how I was doing. Those thoughts came and went, often late at night. Over time, they grew quieter. Not because the need disappeared, but because I learned not to expect anything. I continued working, learning, and saving. Slowly, life began to change. The chaos of my early years gave way to routine. Routine became stability. Stability became something close to peace. I learned how to manage finances, handle responsibilities, and build structure where there had been none before. I did not become emotionally cold, but I did become realistic. I started to understand that not every past relationship can or should be repaired. Some experiences shape you, but they do not need to define your future choices. Letting go does not always mean forgiveness. Sometimes it simply means choosing not to carry unnecessary weight. Years passed, and my situation improved gradually. There were setbacks, but they no longer felt catastrophic. I had learned resilience through repetition, not motivation. Progress was no longer exciting, but it was consistent. Recently, I was finally able to afford a much better place to live. Moving out of the old space felt symbolic, like closing a long chapter. While preparing to leave, I was reminded of everything that had happened there. The memories were mixed, heavy, but distant enough not to overwhelm me. Someone suggested that I check on my mother. It made me pause and reflect. I realized how long it had been since we last spoke and how much I had changed since then. I also realized that reopening that connection would mean revisiting memories I had spent years learning how to live with. I know I would not be here without her. That fact will always be true. I respect the struggles she went through, even if the outcomes were painful. At the same time, I have learned that gratitude does not require proximity. Distance can be a form of peace, not punishment. I no longer feel anger. I also no longer feel obligation. I do not wait for explanations or closure. I accept that some stories end without resolution, and that acceptance has brought me more peace than answers ever could. Today, my life is not perfect. There are still things I am working on, fears I am slowly unlearning, and habits I am trying to change. But my life is steady. I wake up knowing what to expect. I move forward with intention rather than survival instinct. I carry my past with me, not as a burden, but as evidence. Evidence that growth is possible even in isolation. Evidence that consistency can replace chaos. Evidence that stability can be built from nothing, one small step at a time. I hope she is doing well somewhere. I truly do, and I continue moving forward, choosing growth over resentment, calm over conflict, and progress over looking back. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share yours in the comments. Maybe we'll tell it in the next video. Bye.